Adolf Hitler was born on 20th April 1889 in Braunau am Inn, Austria-Hungary. He was the fourth of 6 children born to Alois and Clara Hitler. Only Adolf and his younger sister Paula survived to adulthood. Alois, a customs official, was a strict and demanding figure. His relationship with Adolf was often strained. Clara, on the other hand, was devoted to her children, particularly Adolf. Hitler's early education was unremarkable. He showed little academic promise and often clashed with teachers. His father's death in 1903 deeply affected him. He left school at 16 without qualifications. Hitler then nurtured dreams of becoming an artist. He longed to escape the monotony of provincial life. In 1907, tragedy struck again with the death of his mother from breast cancer. Devastated, Hitler moved to Vienna, determined to pursue his artistic ambitions. He sought admission to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts Vienna. However, his application was rejected, dealing a significant blow to his aspirations. This rejection fueled a growing sense of resentment and frustration within him. He found himself adrift in the bustling metropolis. He struggled to make ends meet, taking odd jobs and even living in homeless shelters for a period. Vienna, at the turn of the century, was a city teeming with a mix of cultures and ethnicities. It was also a breeding ground for nationalist and anti-Semitic sentiment. Vienna in the early 20th century was a melting pot of cultures and ideologies. The city was home to a large Jewish population, which played a significant role in its economic and cultural life. However, this cosmopolitan atmosphere also bred resentment and prejudice. Anti-Semitism was rife, fueled by economic anxieties and nationalist rhetoric. It was during his time in Vienna that Hitler's own prejudices began to solidify into a rigid worldview. He immersed himself in the city's cheap pamphlets and newspapers, many of which peddled racist and anti-Semitic propaganda. He came to view the Jews as a separate and dangerous race, a threat to the purity of the German people. He blamed them for the social and economic ills plaguing Vienna. Hitler's artistic ambitions also suffered during this period. He was twice rejected by the Academy of Fine Arts, which he perceived as a personal affront. His bitterness deepened his sense of alienation and resentment. He began to see himself as a misunderstood genius, destined for greater things. Vienna, therefore, became the crucible in which Hitler's personality and ideology were forged. The city's volatile mix of poverty, prejudice, and political extremism provided fertile ground for his hateful ideas to take root. He emerged from this period a hardened and embittered young man, consumed by a toxic blend of nationalism, anti-Semitism, and a thirst for power. In 1913, Hitler left Vienna and moved to Munich, Germany. He was seeking to evade Austrian military service. When the First World War erupted in 1914, he volunteered to serve in the Bavarian army. The outbreak of war was a pivotal moment for Hitler. It provided him with a sense of purpose and belonging that he had long craved. Hitler served with distinction on the Western Front, rising to the rank of corporal. He was wounded twice during the war, once by shrapnel and once by mustard gas. He experienced the horrors of trench warfare firsthand. He witnessed the deaths of countless comrades. Yet, he seemed to thrive in this chaotic and brutal environment. Germany's defeat in 1918 came as a shattering blow to Hitler. He was recovering from a mustard gas attack when he learned of the armistice. He was devastated by the news. He felt betrayed by the civilian leadership back home. He shared the widespread belief that Germany had been stabbed in the back by pacifists and Jews. The war had a profound impact on Hitler's worldview. It solidified his belief in violence as a legitimate tool for achieving political goals. It deepened his hatred of those he perceived as Germany's enemies. It also left him with a burning desire to avenge Germany's humiliation and restore its former glory. In the aftermath of the First World War, Germany was in turmoil. The country was plagued by economic instability, political violence, and social unrest. This chaotic environment provided fertile ground for extremist movements, including the fledgling Nazi Party. The Nazi Party, originally the German Workers' Party, was a small and insignificant group when Hitler joined in 1919. However, Hitler's charisma, oratorical skills, and ability to tap into the anger and resentment of the German people quickly propelled him through the ranks. Hitler proved to be a gifted propagandist. He understood the power of spectacle and emotion in swaying the masses. He organized mass rallies and marches using inflammatory rhetoric to whip up nationalist fervor. He appealed to the fears and prejudices of ordinary Germans. He offered them scapegoats for their grievances. He promised them a return to greatness. By 1921, Hitler had become the undisputed leader of the Nazi Party. He transformed it from a fringe group into a potent political force. He adopted the swastika as the party symbol. He established the Sturmabteilung, a paramilitary organization to intimidate opponents. He set his sights on seizing power and remaking Germany in his own image. In November 1923, Hitler and his followers attempted to seize power in Munich. This ill-fated coup, known as the Beer Hall Putsch, was a failure. The putsch was poorly planned and executed. The Bavarian authorities crushed it swiftly. Hitler was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison for treason. Although a political disaster, the Beer Hall Putsch proved to be a turning point in Hitler's rise to power. His trial received widespread publicity, making him a national figure. While in prison, he wrote, "My Struggle." This autobiographical manifesto outlined his political ideology and his vision for Germany. It was a rambling and often incoherent work, filled with Hitler's hatred of Jews, Slavs, and communists. He espoused a virulent form of racism, calling for the purification of the German race and the expansion of German territory at the expense of inferior races. He outlined his belief in the stab-in-the-back myth, blaming Jews and Marxists for Germany's defeat in the First World War. Despite its flaws, became the Bible of the Nazi movement. It sold millions of copies, spreading Hitler's poisonous ideas far and wide. It became a blueprint for the horrors that were to follow. Hitler's release from prison in December 1924 coincided with a period of relative stability in Germany. However, the Wall Street crash of 1929 and the ensuing Great Depression plunged Germany into economic chaos. Millions of Germans lost their jobs, businesses collapsed, hunger and despair gripped the land. The Great Depression was a godsend for the Nazi Party. Hitler exploited the economic crisis to his advantage. He presented himself as a strong leader who could restore order and prosperity. He appealed to the fears and anxieties of the German people. He offered them simple solutions to complex problems. The Nazis made significant gains in the 1930 and 1932 elections, becoming the largest party in the Reichstag. The Weimar Republic, already weak and divided, was on the verge of collapse. Conservative elites, fearing a communist takeover, saw Hitler as a bulwark against the left. They believed they could control him. On 30th January 1933, President Paul von Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler Chancellor of Germany. It was a fateful decision that would have catastrophic consequences for Germany and the world. The Nazi seizure of power was complete. Once in power, Hitler moved swiftly to consolidate his grip on Germany. He exploited a fire that destroyed the Reichstag building in February 1933 to suspend civil liberties and crack down on his opponents. He blamed the fire on the communists, using it as a pretext to outlaw the Communist Party and arrest its leaders. In March 1933, Hitler pushed through the Enabling Act. This law gave him dictatorial powers, effectively ending democracy in Germany. The Enabling Act allowed Hitler to enact laws without the consent of the Reichstag. It marked the beginning of the Nazi dictatorship. With the Enabling Act in place, Hitler moved quickly to eliminate all opposition. He banned all other political parties, turning Germany into a one-party state. He established the Gestapo, a secret police force, to terrorize and eliminate his enemies. He set up concentration camps to imprison political opponents, Jews, and other undesirables. Hitler's seizure of power was swift and brutal. Within a matter of months, he had transformed Germany from a fragile democracy into a totalitarian dictatorship. He had silenced all opposition. He had unleashed a reign of terror that would engulf Germany and the world. Having consolidated his power, Hitler set about remaking German society according to his twisted ideology. He established a totalitarian state that controlled every aspect of life. The Nazis glorified war and violence, indoctrinating young people with their racist and anti-Semitic beliefs. Central to the Nazi ideology was the concept of racial purity. Hitler believed that the Aryan race, which he equated with the German people, was superior to all other races. He viewed Jews as a parasitic race that threatened the purity and strength of the German nation. In 1935, the Nazis enacted the Nuremberg Laws. These laws stripped Jews of their German citizenship, depriving them of their basic rights. The Nuremberg laws prohibited marriage and sexual relations between Jews and Germans. They defined who was Jewish based on ancestry, not religious practice. The Nuremberg laws were a key step in the Nazis' systematic persecution of the Jews. They created a legal framework for discrimination and segregation. They paved the way for the horrors of the Holocaust. Hitler's foreign policy aimed to expand German territory and create a vast empire in Eastern Europe. He believed Germany needed Lebensraum or living space at the expense of other nations. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, starting World War II. Hitler's armies, aided by the Soviet Union, quickly overran Poland. This was followed by victories in Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. The Nazis implemented their genocidal plan to exterminate the Jews of Europe. Millions of Jews were deported to concentration camps where they were murdered or worked to death. The Holocaust was one of the most horrific crimes in human history. Hitler's dream of world domination eventually crumbled. His armies suffered major defeats on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union. The Allied invasion of Normandy in 1944 marked the beginning of the end for the Nazi regime. In April 1945, as Soviet forces closed in on Berlin, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 8, 1945, ending World War II in Europe. Hitler's legacy is one of unparalleled death and destruction. His actions plunged the world into a global conflict that claimed tens of millions of lives. His ideology of hatred and racism led to the genocide of 6 million Jews. He left behind a devastated and divided Europe, forever scarred by his regime.